Hey, here we are. Chapter 4, the final essay. What is the power of the monster? So here we are with our last chapter and our last paper. I want you to remember that since this is the final paper this semester, it really should be the very best work that you're capable of doing. This is where you really show off, if you will, what you can do, what you have learned, right? So that when I'm looking at this final paper, I go, wow, this is awesome. To help you with this, I want to open up the subject area beyond Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is a great chapter, but I want to give you the opportunity to choose your own topic if you want. But please remember, it must be developed as an argument based in research about something connected to monsters. Don't go saying, I want to write about why cigarettes are bad for your health or something stupid like that. We're not going to do that. Okay, so here, first of all, you can choose to write on any of the making connection questions from Chapter 4. Okay, so as you know, right, all the chapters, all the essays in the chapters have a series of questions at the end. The last set of questions are called the making connection questions, and you can choose one of those. Okay, don't have to walk through all of them. You can choose to research and investigate a monster that has not been talked about this semester. Okay, so there's a lot of things out there that we haven't even addressed. You might particularly look at a monster from a non-Western tradition that has been overlooked. Argue how that monster reflects its time and place of origin. Okay, so if you want to pick something that you've seen or heard about that comes from, maybe the Native American tradition. We have a little bit of that, of course, in the last chapter, but there's certainly much more that could be done from Asia, from Africa, from somewhere that we haven't really examined or talked about. Or choose a monster that has been recorded in many different cultures and places throughout history, and examine its different manifestations. In other words, a kind of monster that sort of appears all over the place. It may be different in one place than another, right? Typically they are, during times and places, but they're kind of fundamentally the same thing. What do those different manifestations reflect about the cultures from which they come? Such monsters could include dragons, which are, after all, pretty widely around. Vampires, again, in all their different manifestations. Witches, and witches could be male or female. We typically jump to the word witch, we think female, okay, but there are male witches or warlocks. Werepeople. So we hear of werewolves, for example, and their werewolves are discussed in Chapter 4. But there are other were creatures where people transform into something else, like a bear, for example, would be another such thing. Mere people, mermaids or mermen, right, or merfolk, as they are sometimes called, or any other such creature that you find that has kind of a cultural significance around the world. Right? It doesn't just show up in one place and one time, like a centaur, for example. Or, last bullet point, find a different topic of your own choosing that I haven't presented that seems appropriate for this assignment. Warning, if you choose this option, you must communicate with me by Thursday, March 17th to make sure the topic is acceptable for this assignment, okay? So no freelancing completely, right? I want to make sure that we've talked about it, that you've at least sent me an email or a message, or you come to my office hour, and we can have a discussion, and you say, hey, Mr. Hoffman, I've got this great idea. I would like to write about blah, 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 okay? And I'll say, oh, that's a great idea. Or I'll say, nah, I don't think so. We'll see what happens. Now, the final research paper is due on Friday, March 25th. That is, of course, the last day of our short 8-week semester, 11:59 p.m. Okay, can't go any later than that because the semester is over. It's done with. Kaput. It's finished. Be sure to follow the out-of-class essay guidelines for matters of form and style, as I've been saying all semester long. Be sure to include a word count at the end of your essay. Again, that's pretty simple. Remember, you must meet minimum requirements, including word count, sources, and subject matter. No late essays will be accepted. Indeed, Canvas will shut down. Okay. In other words, after 11:59 on Friday, March 25th, your class is over, right? Your class is done. Canvas will not accept any work after that. Now, as we've done all semester long, right, we piece out some of the work. The first is the thesis outline, which is due by Friday. That's this Friday, March 18th, 11:59 p.m. Please have MLA citation entries for 4 of your sources, okay? 4 this time. None of which are from the textbook. Okay, again, and some of you think you're being sly or sneaky and putting in an MLA citation entry that is our, from our textbook, but you don't use the textbook as the entry. Seriously? Do you think I not know that? Come on. All right, so don't do that. That just annoys me to no end, and I lower your grade accordingly. So we need to have 4 sources that derive from research, none of which are from the textbook. And of course, as we have done previously, we'll divide the class into peer editing groups. Submit your rough draft to the Canvas work group and to me by Wednesday, March the 23rd. Now, because of course class ends on Friday, we have to truncate the rest of this. Submit the completed peer editing sheets to your Canvas work group and me by Thursday, March the 24th. Okay, so instead of having 2 days, you only have 1 day. Get in there, get it done, right? Because then you only have 1 day from there to here, right? This is an unfortunate situation with the way the course is laid out, right? With an 8-week semester, you don't really have that last extra weekend, which is just the way it goes. Now, the minimum requirements, we've doubled the size of the essay. It needs to be at least 2,000 words, okay? That doesn't mean that your paragraphs are twice the size that they used to be. It just means they're longer. Now, a lot of you, this should not be that hard because a lot of you are writing 1,300, 1,400 word essays already anyway, okay? So the main thing is we're just writing more, right? We're just getting deeper, deeper, and deeper into our subject, whatever that subject happens to be, okay? So whatever you choose up here, right, needs to be substantial enough for you to write that big of an essay. Now, when we say 2,000 words, oh gosh, that's still, given double space and normal font size, normal margins, that's still less than 8 pages, right? That's not an enormously long paper. Strong essay structure, including introduction, concession, rebuttal arguments, main body, and conclusion. I want you to have at least 8 sources for this paper. That means you can have more, at least as a minimum, not a maximum. 6 of which originate in print or have print analogs, right? And we know what that means, right? It means it's a magazine article, a newspaper article, a journal article, a book, a government report, right? Something which originates in print or has a print analog. And we need at least 4 scholarly sources, which includes dissertations, peer-reviewed journal articles, or excerpts from university press books. Now, we've talked about this already this semester. I've talked about the idea of using our Mesa College databases to acquire this kind of stuff, okay? Please remember, again, our textbook does not count as a source. You may use it, of course. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm just saying it doesn't count towards your minimum. And then movies and websites and stuff like that would all be on top of the 6, which originate in print or have print analogs, right? That'd be extra. MLA format, of course, as we have been doing all semester long. That would be 9th edition, of course. Okay, so just rolling back upwards again. This first thing, choose to write on any of the making connection questions. So I just want to review just together very briefly what these questions, not what the questions are, but what the articles are. The first is called Fear of the Monster is Really a Kind of Desire by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen. This is an excerpt from a larger piece called Monster Culture, 7 Theses. It's a very intense piece, by the way. I know colleagues of mine who have used monsters as their theme, and they have used the entire work, Monster Culture, 7 Theses, and I'm just very, very impressed because it's even just examining one part of this is very intense and challenging. But there we go. Fear of the monster is really a kind of a desire. That is to say, we kind of like the idea of wanting to be the monster ourselves. Mostly out of a sense of freedom, right? That the monster experiences freedom that human beings do not have because we have senses of morality and ethics, what's right, what's wrong. And even if we do wrong, we kind of know what's wrong, right? And maybe, whatever your moral beliefs are, you may expect to be punished for it or something, right? Whereas the monster, none of this really exists. These boundaries, if you will, are not present. The second article is a passage from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Okay. How should I put this? Arguably, maybe along with Frankenstein, the most famous piece of monster literature, certainly within the 19th century tradition written in English. Right? You have Dracula by Bram Stoker. So there's a brief passage here in which the main character, Jonathan Harker, is trapped in Dracula's castle in Transylvania, and he comes across 3 female vampires who, how shall I put this, he kind of thinks something's going on that isn't really going on. He thinks he's going to get lucky. He's lucky he survives. Let's just put it that way. Unsafe Sex, Romancing the Vampire by Karen Beckstein. Finally asks us to look at Twilight. Yes, we've, you can't hardly talk about vampires anymore without the issue of Twilight. And the concept of the vampire moving away from the evil Count Dracula, right, and his merry band of female vampires, to hero vampires, like Edward Cullen and the whole Cullen family, who are very atypical vampires considering the vampire tradition. Elizabeth A. Lawrence writes a piece called Werewolves in Psyche and Cinema, Man-Beast Transformation and Paradox. And this, of course, takes on the issue of the werewolf. And the werewolf, of course, is another monster that has been around actually for a very, very long time. In contemporary versions, highly influenced, of course, in the movies, kind of play with this notion of the animal inside of us, right? The kind of traditional idea that we as humans may be only very thinly separated from the animal kingdom, that our presence in civilization, our walking upright, our wearing clothes, our behaving in certain ways can quite honestly be dispensed with. Maybe is a little too harsh of a word, but the idea is it goes away very easily. All you need is a full moon. Well, not always a full moon, by the way. That's only one version of the werewolf mythology. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. We have a passage from that novel, again another 19th century novel, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? The very famous doppelganger. Right, the idea that you have a double. So we need to be cautious of that. That inside everybody is sort of another one, an evil twin, so to speak. Aaron McChrystal looks at Hyde as the villain. And